Hi everybody, this is Tor Storley, and I am back with another video. In this video, I want to take a look at how you can extract data from the Securities and Exchange Commission's Edgar financial statement site and take that data and run it through the Edgar's API so you can actually extract JSON. So what I have prepared here is a VSCode Jupyter Notebook that we're going to use to first retrieve financial statements from Edgar, and then we're going to take those and we're going to analyze it using Deepseek. So I will be using Python and Jupyter Notebook. All right, so I'm going here to find the actual website. This is the website you want to go. So I'm going into search filings. And when you get here, you can see there you can type in the ticker. So for ABV, it's ABBV. And as you can see, it shows up here. And here is the actual identifier for ABV that SEC is using. So when I click here now, you can see it brings me up to this page. And you basically figure out what you want to see. I want to see the 10K reports, and I want to see the latest one, the one that ends in December 31st, 2024. Now, when I click in here now and I go to this, it will load it up and it will bring up that particular file. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And this is the file that I'm using in my VSCode here. This is the one I'm referring to. So that's the file you want to extract the financial statement information from. Now, if you look at this file here, there is a bunch of sections. So when you click on sections, you can see it covers a lot of stuff that has like notes. There's a lot of stuff here, as you can see. You can minimize, you can maximize, whatever. The one that I'm looking at, here you can see an example of what they will look like. Now this format here is called XBRL. And here you can see it shows up. And what it is, you can see it's a extensible business reporting language. It's a global framework for sharing financial and business data electronically. It's based on XML, but it also supports JSON and CSV format. So that's the format they decided on. That it was in process of being built over time. So when you try to extract the data from these type of statements, it's not plain vanilla as you think. If I hover over one of these numbers and open it, you can see it has additional information in the number itself. So it's very hard to scrape this stuff. So instead, what you can do is you can use the code from the API they give you to convert from this XBRL to JSON, as you can see here. So that's a special function that they provide for you to convert this stuff. So when I open this API here, you can see that when you go to the tutorials and you say extract financial statements from SEC filings, this gives you like a Medium article, but the one I wanted to show you was, I think, let me see if it's on the docs. It has this XBRL to JSON converter, as you can see. So when you retrieve the data, you'll get it in JSON format, and you can see a little piece of it here. So that's the idea. We're going to take that and we're going to retrieve the 10Ks balance sheet, the income statement, statement of cash flow from the Securities and Exchange Commission Edgar system. In order to do that, when we get in here and you go and you select this tutorial that I showed you, let me see if I can find it again here. Tutorials, financials, extract financial statements. And down here you can see this is the free Jupyter Notebook you can do. So when I click here and it opens here, you can see it brings you to this notebook. And that's the one that I stole most of the code that I'm using from. And you can step through it here, but I didn't just grab everything that is in this article. I used to get the income statement, I did the balance sheet, and I did the cash flow statement. I used the code just the way it is, and I made a couple of changes to fit my scenarios. So that's what we're doing here. You can see here, we're importing requests, JSON and pandas, and we create a URL, which points back to my ABV HTML page that has the XBRL that's going to be converted into JSON. And this one is the endpoint to the XBRL to JSON function I just showed you. And you might recognize this is the one that we drilled into to find this. And now what I do is I create a final URL here. Well, actually, the code that I stole does this. And then a response. And then you basically load the JSON like this into a variable. So once you get that, you can kind of look at and see what it produces. So let's start by maybe importing all these libraries. And I will run some of this code, but not necessarily all of it. Okay, so I need to get my API key like this. And then I need to run and get the XBRL JSON output from that API. And as you can see, it's running down here. Takes a few seconds. And right just about here, it's done. So now I got all the XBRL JSON loaded in here. Now what we can do is we can take a look at maybe some of it. So we will be running a little piece of this so you can see what it looks like. And here's the JSON output, as you can see, from this snippet where I search for the income statements. And one of the items is the cost of goods sold and services sold. And I'm only showing a couple of records here. So that's what this one. And you can indent it as much as you want to just for a look and feel. If I want to go 7, I can just go 7, right? So now it's much, much more indented. All right, so here is a function that gets the income statement. And this is taken straight from that GitHub notebook that I showed you. So I'm not going to even talk about this. You can read up for yourself about what the code means in that GitHub notebook. Basically what it does, I'm going to load the income statement based on what we just retrieved, the XBRL JSON statement. Then what I'm going to do the same thing for balance sheet, like this, passing in the extracted JSON file we just looked at. And finally, I'm going to load in the statement of cash flow right here. And what I'm doing here is, so let me go back up and let me run the income statement. So let's run it. And it converts it into a nice data frame. So this is a data frame now. But if you just run it the way it is, let me show you what I mean. So if I run it like this, you can see it comes back like this. So what happens is that there is some crud in here. You can see this one here is not coming through very nicely. It's like it's adding some additional stuff in here. So I don't want that column. So what I do is I just simply extract all those that I did 3 columns in front of this one. So when I run this again now, you can see now I'm getting a clean output here. So that's what I do for the income statement. You can get the balance sheet like this. And again, I can look at some of the columns that are clean, and they look like this. Now, in case you wonder what it will look like without, it looks like this. So as you can see, a bunch of, not a number of kind of things coming through, and I don't want that. So you could do this, and if you want to, you can take it to the next level. You can take this data here as a data frame, and you can simply, load it into a database like DuckDB and create some tables if you want to. And that's another option. I'm not doing that in this video. So here's the statement of cash flow. So run that. And we'll take a look at that again. I'm removing some of the columns. In case you wonder, for this particular company, you can see you're getting some of the not so nice outputs. A lot of NANs, as you can see. So that's what I'm doing here with this iLock. Okay, so that's the index location. And then what I do is I convert it into a string by taking the data frame, the income statement data frame, only the columns I want and all the rows, and I convert it to a string. And then you can see what it will look like when I run it. And you can see this is the way it looks. Now, one thing I notice is that if you run a lower model of the DeepSeek, for example, the 1.5 billion one, parameter one, sometimes it can't even read some of these numbers, and that, so it gets some really weird output. Now, I don't know if it's because it's text format, but you need to convert it into text for the large language model to process this. So what I did here was I created the text version for the income statement. You can do the same thing for balance sheet. So in case you wonder, it looks like this. And for cash flow statement, like this. I'm not going to spend time on these two other statements because I'm not analyzing those. So finally now then, we're here at the DeepSeek-R1, and this is the general function I'm going to be using to run this stuff. I'm passing in the prompt as the input text and the model I want to use. Now, why do I do that? Well, because I have different models I'm going to be using. And one of those models is the 1.5 model. But in this case, I'm setting the run model like this. So here is this run model. What it does, it creates a model name, as you can see, called a DeepSeek-R1 R 1.5 billion parameters. So it's the smallest model. And then what it does is I'm passing in the input text, so I don't use this. And here's the results using a chat response, making a chat, passing the model name, making the message. You have a role, which in this case is user, and the content is what you're passing in as the prompt, that basically. In our case, the prompt is going to be, in this case, just some text because we're just testing it out. From the result objects, there's a message component, and that one has a content, and I'm going to replace any period signs with a new line. And then print it out and then return it. Okay, so how do you use this? Well, you can use it the way it comes through right here, or you can try to style it yourself using HTML and CSS in the output. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm calling this model here, and it's going to return this piece, as you can see. But I'm going to print it the way it comes through in the first place, and then I'm going to print it out the way I'm formatting it into HTML so you can see the difference. So here's the result from calling this, passing in the model name and the prompt. And the prompt, as you can see, is simply a basic question: what is a Unix timestamp? And there I'm setting another variable, HTML content, and I'm using a formatting string here in Python. And I'm passing in some HTML so I can format the look and feel of what comes back out. Now, I found out when I do this, it doesn't format it very nicely. You have to spend a lot of time. The original output is better looking than this, but I'm just showing that you can format it if you like to. Okay, so here we are. Let's run this. And now let's try to run it through this model with 1.5 billion parameters. So it's running, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And as you can see, it came through. Now, this is the original one that I just print out what comes back from that model. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Now, this one here didn't work because str object has no attribute message. The reason is because I already captured it right here, so I don't have to, and I'm passing the format result back. So as you can see, I made a couple of small changes. This one was replaced up here and returned. So when I call it here, as you can see, I'm simply replace the new line character from the printout above with a BR tag that's going to be used for the HTML output. So this is what the original text print looks like, which comes from here, this line here. And as you can see, it prints fairly nicely because we have new line characters, so it prints out like this. And then below, this is the one that I format into HTML. It puts this period right here, so that's not good. And then it does the break. So maybe I have to remove that period sign. I have to do something about it right here, I guess. So whatever it is, I should probably remove that guy and just do this, I guess. Okay. Now, I'm not going to print it out again because then I have to wait another 5 seconds. But as you can see, it prints out. And you can style it any way you want here, as you can see. Now, what it says here is just goes through what is a Unix epoch system. And, you know, so, okay, I'm trying to understand what a Unix epoch is. So it kind of is talking to itself, and then it goes through and try to calculate. And it says, okay, what is a Unix? Well, it goes back to January 1st, 1970, and how many seconds has elapsed since then. You can see it here as the 1970 seconds since, and so forth. So it tries to explain everything. I'm not going to dwell into this. I just test it out so you can see the formatting and everything. And here I'm just have a slightly different color. That's all I'm doing. But what is different about this one is that if you look at it, I'm using a style sheet, as you can see. So where's that style sheet coming from? Well, I have a style sheet in here, and it has this color, as you can see. So in this case, I'm actually using a style sheet here. You can see link rel style sheet type is CSS, and I'm referring to this style sheet directly in this display HTML. So here's the content, and then again is the replace of this. So I can run this now, and when I do, it's right away. And you can see now I get slightly different text. And as you can see now, it looks a little better because I took out that period sign. So all I'm saying here is you can format your output to your heart's desire. Now, another thing I did that was kind of interesting is to use a widget. So what I want to do now is I use this widget and create a widget VBox that is going to basically hold a list over models you can use with a click button, and then it's going to run the model against the code that I listed above that will actually pass in the income statement and see what it does with it. So here you can see there's a bunch of CSS styling here. Now that's not important because I'm not going to necessarily use it. And then here's a list over models in an array, as you can see. And then here's the function run model, pass in the financial statement and pass in the model name you want to use. So you choose one of these models. In my case, I only have two. This one is the default, which is really, you could set R1:7B if you want to. So this is 7 billion, so that takes longer to run. My machine, it will finish, but it takes a while before it finishes actually. And here's the run model, and here's the results. Again, there's nothing new here. I commented out a bunch of stuff here. I don't need a text inbox drop-down list I'm going to use, widget drop-down. And the options is going to be the models, and then the first one is going to be the 1.5 model because that's the default now, and some descriptions, etc. I have a run button, which is a widget button. Here is some text that it puts. Very similar to creating a button in HTML. Then I have an output area where I'm going to have the results. That's a widget output. And then this one is the button click method. So this one does a lot of different things. The input text, I say, can you analyze the income statement for Avi based on this income statement data? And then I have two new lines, and then I'm passing in the text from that income statement. Then I'm printing out some stuff. I'm using a bunch of conversions here to make my timestamp not look so ugly, but bring it back in like normal timestamp. And that's what all this code is doing here. It's just basically fixing the timestamp so it looks better. And because it's a JSON type of file, I can actually drill in to these different keys in the JSON. So one is called total duration. There is also a content, which is going to hold the output. And there's also the created at, which is the, well, actually is that converted, but I'm capturing it up here. So if you see, this one, there's a result created at is another key in there that has values. So that's what I'm doing. And I commented out, but you can take a look at it yourself. I'll probably put this out on my GitHub repository. This is basically how you can use your regular expression to replace a bunch of stuff, because there was, in the text I'm getting back, there's one period, and then there's star, star, and some other stuff coming through. So in other words, let me show you. Okay, it's not in this output, but it is in the actual financial data output. You can simply ignore this if you're not going to use it. You don't really need it. It's just something I put in there. So in case you have to deal with regular expressions, you can start doing similar things like this. Then I'm just looping through the pattern here, doing a sub on a regular expression here with a pattern, replacement, and content like this. And then you can do the HTML output like we did before and display it here. So enough about that. Then when I click this button, that's going to call that model and run it, and then display it in this widget. So what does that look like? Well, let's run it and see what happens. So here you can see it down here. What I did in the styling up here, the CSS, as you can see, I have background colors like this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm giving it a dark mode, because by default it comes back with like in white. So I'm applying a dark mode to this widget. So that's what this one is doing here. And it looks like this. So as you can see, I have a drop list. I can choose whatever model I want. Right now it's sitting at 1.5, and it's going to pass in that income statement. Now I'm running the model. It prints out something in this box, as you can see. Do it a little bigger so you can see it properly. And it's running, and I'm going to still it while I'm waiting here. It shouldn't take very long, but I'm going to still it not to waste too much time. All right, so it finished, as you can see. And here you can see those extra JSON keys that I was talking about, that created key, for example. Here is the output, and it starts looking at the different output that it arrived at. I'm just looking at this stuff. I have to make it a little smaller so I can actually see it here. So it talks about revenue from 2022 through 2024. So basically, I'll have to do some fixing here because this period here should really be new line or something here. So I fixed it a little bit. So I changed this to replace the period signs with a new line character to fix the output a little bit because I couldn't even read it. See, it still has some problems here, so I can't really move past this. It doesn't word wrap, which I don't like. I wonder if you can do that with the output area, if you can word wrap it or not. I don't know. In any event, I just want to show you this stuff. So here you can see, it talks about the revenue, went from this amount to this amount and so forth. There's a lot of details in here, and I don't know how accurate some of this stuff is, but it's trying to analyze the whole statement. So what you can do is you can run your own, and then you can look at the actual financial statements, and you can see if this actually makes any sense whatsoever. But it does capture the numbers, and it formats the numbers for each year, as you can see. And they talk about selling and administrative expenses, but then it talks about, I think it's hallucination on some of this stuff because it's a smaller model, and sometimes, you have inflate. They talk about inflation, potential inflation, and so forth. So how well this is doing, I'm not sure. But there's a lot of text coming back, so I'm not have time to sit and read through everything here. I'll let you do that if you want to read it. Here it says earnings per share increased in 2023, but fell in 2024. So what we can do is we can scroll up till we see that data again. Increased from 2023 to 2024, but fell again, it said. So earnings per share increased significantly in 2023, but fell sharply in 2024. So I don't see that increases significantly. It dropped significantly. It didn't increase significantly. And then a sharp drop. Well, it did drop from here to here. You really got to read between the lines here because I don't know if it's hallucination or what it's doing here. But again, you can look at this over and see if it makes sense to you. But the smaller model that will most likely do mistakes. So these numbers doesn't even match what I saw up there. If I want to run it again for the last time here, I can simply go in now and I can choose the 7B model and run that guy. I'm going to still it and wait for it to finish. So it actually finished after many minutes of running in the 7B model. Now I'm looking at some of this output here, and one thing that strikes me is that it sounds really good, and it's showing a little better numbers and outlines there and stuff. So I'm looking like revenues, for example, and they tell there's been a slight decline from this in 2022 through this in 2023 and 24. So from here to this in 2024. So here it lays it out and it says this is the conclusion, right? And it tells you that it had a decrease of 6% from 22 through 2023. Now I put some of these numbers, and by the way, if you want to get the numbers, which is this one here, and what you can do is you can actually go up here to this, click this little, the three ellipses here, and you can click preview. When you do, it will run a Quarto preview for you, and it comes up here on the side here. And when you go click this guy, you expand it out, you'll get it on a web page like this. From here, when you go down and you look at the data frame here, you can simply grab this stuff like this, copy, paste it right into Excel. So that's what I did with a couple of these accounts. I just did that. So 5805.4 million, which is probably okay because this is in millions. This is billions, right? So it went from 5.8 to 5.4 to 5.6, okay? So you have 5.8 to 5.4 to 5.6. And then I computed the percentage change from here, from 2022 to 2023 and 2023 to 2024. And these are the percentage I'm getting. So let me just format it as percent, so it's a little easier to read. So as you can see here, it went from 6% to 4%. And that's correct, according to this. So it says revenues has shown inconsistent growth over the 3 years. So up and down, up type of thing, which is fine. So revenue looks okay. I looked at the cost of goods sold, which went from $1,000,007, and you can see it over here, $1,741 to $2,041 to 16904. So that looks correct, those numbers. Then that was an increase from 2022 to 2023 of 70%, so that's correct, and a decrease by 70%. So right, that is not correct. So right there was a problem. And it says that it's been volatile and, so basically what it boils down to here is that as I go down this list, it gets worse and worse. But when I'm getting down to like interest expense and operating income and all that, it starts producing weird numbers. So one thing I also looked at was earnings per share. So if you look at earnings per share here, you can see that here's earnings per share down here. It says $5.99 and then 0.46, an increase of 1.783%. Now, I don't understand this because, if it went from a negative earnings per share, so right there I'm getting into some weird numbers because when I look at, these are the numbers that I'm seeing on that data frame, not this weird stuff here. So I don't know what it's doing here. I wouldn't trust this if you threw it after me. But it's up to you. You can try it out and see. Maybe if I have larger and larger model, it might do better. And maybe if instead of converting directly in the string like we do, right from the JSON or into the data frame and then to a string, maybe as a CSV file or something like that might help too. I don't know. In any event, I wouldn't trust this stuff. But it does kind of go ahead and try to be clever about the analysis and saying a lot of the right words and so forth. But as far as what I'm looking at here versus what it produces, no, I don't think I would use this at all. All right, that was this video. I hope you liked it. If you do, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I will much appreciate it. Have a great day, evening, night, wherever you happen to be in the world. And we'll see you soon.